Okay, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I'm streaming. Alright, that's going to echo for a while, but I am going to close. Let me mute this. Alright, so,
Are you talking to me?
no, I'm talking to my streaming channel. There won't be any music today because I'm still working on a couple of. I'm getting my royalty free music set up in a separate thing, in a little folder on my computer, and that way I will be able to listen to that as we're going, and I'm hoping that will. Oops, I just closed the wrong window.
Not live, Dad. Oh, yes, you are.
Let me. No, I'm not finding it. Everything is echoing in my ear as I'm talking to you because I'm not able to mute the sound that's coming from my computer yet. So it's confusing as I'm trying to talk.
I want to figure that.
Hmm. This is a learning process for me. Please bear with me. The really fast typing you're hearing is my wife. I'm like three finger hunt and peck typist myself, but my wife is an executive assistant for a rather large corporation and also does some online work as well. So she does type very quickly. That's not working. So that muted both the audio and the microphone when I muted that. Now, if anyone out there in Twitch land has got more experience with this and has some input for me on how I can get this working, I use OBS and my Huion Art tablet. What I've been working on most recently on this art is her. And this is Jacqueline Mudgett. And she is my Nosferatu who is part of Botticelli blood clan. And if you guys are interested in finding out more about that, by all means, shoot me jump in the chat there on Twitch and message me, tell me that you're interested in finding out about her, and I will happily explain who they are and what they do. Expect that a lot of people are really watching this, although I did post this to Facebook, and so if any of my friends or family from Facebook saw that post and jumped on, welcome to the stream. I think that's probably going to stay this darker color up here because these are the shadows and the darker gradient colors that are going to be in her tattered cloaks, because Jacqueline is kind of an underground homeless person that lives in the catacombs below 1881 or 86 London. And so she wears these tattered robes when she's in the home, the hidden area. And then when she goes out in public, she actually has a nicer dress that she wears that is more formal looking, what you would think of as a 19th century English person, but it's all in black. And she has this kind of a pillbox type hat with this black veil that covers her face so that you can't really see her nasty, ugly visage. And her family owns a cemetery in London, and so what they do is or what she does, I should say, is when she comes out, she kind of exits that area, and she's only known around London as the widow. And that helps keep the masquerade intact, as well as gives her a reason to be in that area. I don't need 29 on that. Let me drop that down to about a 10. That'll work. All right. And if anybody's curious about the drawing itself, yes, I did the original pencils as a thumbnail, and then I scanned them in, and I traced my original pencils to do the blue line. And I created a layer for the blue line separately from the rest of the layers. And what I am doing now basically is going in and wherever there would be a highlighted light where the moonlight hits the tatters will be the lighter violet color, and then there's the medium color, which is the whole rest of this, and then this darker almost blackish violet is wherever it's in the shadows and hidden away. And what I've done is I have created layers here in Photoshop, one of which is the midtones, or the main bulk of the main bulk of the robe, the tattered garment, or whatever you want to call it. And then as a layer above that, I'm doing the highlights and the shadows, and that's what I'm working on now, is just kind of giving it more of a 3D effect. And if you look, I will zoom out here, give you a full view of her with the staff and everything. There you go. So you can see here along this, if you're looking at where my mouse is, that magnifying glass, that's the shadow of the cloak against the arm of the sleeve here, and then this is the shadow inside the sleeve, and this would be dark tatter in the background because it's on the opposite side of the sleeve here. When I go in here, I'm going to put some highlights along these tattered areas here, and I'm trying to keep the highlights to match where the moon is. And as you can see up here, this large circular area in the background is going to be the moon, and I'm going to put that layer in the backdrop, and then I will give it a little bit of a moon-like texture in a couple of areas, and then I'm going to use Photoshop to give it an exterior glow. But the ring, the glowing ring, is going to be slightly separate from the actual moon itself, to give it kind of that, and I don't remember what you call that light, where if you're looking up at the moon, there's a ring around the outside of the moon, just slightly out. And I'm going to do that with the background darkness. I'm going to take the moon shape, drop it into the background, pick up that background color, the night, and then I'm going to expand it up slightly to just slightly larger than the moon, and then I'm going to make that have the outline glow, and the moon will not have that glow, which will make it to where it looks like a ring around the moon, of a glowing ring around the moon. At least that's my thought about it. So with the shadows, I gotta zoom back in here. With the shadows, what I do is I find a piece of the tattered cloak that's hanging out, and I go along the inside away from where the moon is, and that gives that tattered piece like it's standing out some. And then on the outside of it, find a lighter, there's the light. So then on the outside here, I would just run a brief lighter color here, showing the highlight, or where the light is kind of coming into, as I would say in my younger days, kiss the fabric with light. It just kind of gives it a little bit of without getting too detailed on it, it gives it that illusion of 3 dimensions. The other other thing that you have to remember is the way when light hits it, it's going to be thicker in areas that kind of face the light and thinner along the edges. And this pixelated look that you see here is because I'm zoomed in so far. This is actually a 300 dpi image, and dpi is dots per inch for those not aware of the Photoshop terminology. Or I mean, you guys, you know that a JPEG is a 75 dpi. Well, this is 300 dpi, so it's a very high resolution image, which means when I cut or crop out, you can see that black box there. That's what I'm actually working on. Everything outside the box over here, these are just colors that I'm using for, like, you can see this kind of a tannish color. I use that for the skull. And if I zoom in on the thing, you can see the background here was dark with light highlights that kind of wisping in it, whereas the background here was light with dark shadows wisping through it to give the illusion of shadow. I mean, of feathers. And there's a reason for it to be purple like that, is because the character has a familiar which is known as Jester, and Jester is a mystically summoned undead bird. And so what that is he has or she, I should say, this is Jacqueline Mudgett, she has a skull of a dead raven, and with the help of a mage and with her ability of animalism, and she has another ability of if you all vampires can ghoul certain animals and other people, and what a ghoul is it's basically a zombie. They're not quite a vampire, but they take some of their blood and they feed it to something, and then that becomes bonded to them, blood bonded, and they do whatever the vampire tells them to do. So Jacqueline has done this with a bird. So a dead bird basically is brought back as a ghoul, and it's bonded to her. My power as a vampire is not strong enough to bring a skeletal form back to life. But in the storyline that we're running, my storyteller, which is the version of a DM or a GM, they killed off, or they didn't kill us off. He started this where we just spent somewhere in the vicinity of 2 decades in torpor. So, like 20. All right, Morgan, was it 10 years, or how long were we in torpor?
I think it was 15 to 20.
Morgan says 15 to 20, and I don't remember exactly, but when we came out of torpor, obviously, a ghoul, in order to maintain its connection to you, has to be fed blood on a regular basis. So 15 to 20 years means I've lost my ability to ghoul the Jester. But the Raven Skull was there with me. So a combination of the mage's power and my power, they were able to bring that back and put it back under my control. And so Jester is kind of my master of... I have a flock of ravens through my animalism that do what I ask them to do. It's my... They're my spies in London. They fly around and collect information and bring it back to me. And I'm a member of a society known as the Invictus. And so I collect spy information from my ravens that both help me and give me information which is basically in the kindred or vampires in general that live in this area or unlive in this area. Information is funds. It's resources that you can trade for other information that you can use to make your plans work going forward. And so Jacqueline is using her ravens who are traveling around and picking up the information of where her brothers and sisters trying to find out where the rest of her family is since she was killed. Because the particular bloodline that she's a part of, one of the things that they do is they're blind. As you can see by looking at her face, it's kind of you can see that there's still flesh there, but it's very gaunt, very drawn back and away from her teeth, and she looks almost like a skull. It's almost, if you think of the Red Skull from Captain America, I know that's kind of popular with the movies and stuff. That's a lot of what this type of vampire has. Is they're very monstrous in look, which is why when she goes out as the widow, she wears that veil down. It avoids other people asking, talking to her and approaching her, because she looks like she's in mourning, and it avoids other people seeing her face because scary. It also helps her with her. Matter of fact, let's work a little bit on that face. I had an idea for that. I'm gonna go with kind of a very pale. I'll go pale blue. I'm going to go with kind of an orange color on this. Let me give her face its own layer. We're going to do a new layer. And I'm going to call this layer head layer. And then, wait a minute, where is, alright, so I need to copy, go back to the cloak layer, and I'll use my lasso tool here. I'm going to grab that with a Control X, Control V, and then I can move that back into place. And I will call that nostril. The number of layers that I'm using seems like it's a lot. It's because I'm very out of practice with my Photoshop usage. So I figure more layers gives me more options. If I need to delete something I did a long time back, I can just find the layer that it's on. I can delete the entire layer and rebuild it from scratch. I'll put that up there and go back to the head layer. Doing here is I'm going all the way around I'm actually going to leave the teeth out of this. This may be a little too fleshy colored, but it won't matter up front because I'll show you what I'm going to do. That's going to be the neck. Come down this back side here. Alright, I can get my eraser out and clean up these lines here. Get my paint bucket fill. Boom. And what this does is it gives me a base that I can kind of work from. And I can go in here and make adjustments as I see fit. Like, is you may be able to see there's areas in here that I didn't quite get right to the edge of the blue, and that really doesn't matter that much because of pen tool. I can go back in and kind of fill some of those whites. Eraser tool, I can go back in and take out some of the overspray. And I know an expert Photoshop artist probably wouldn't have to do as much erasing and backtracking as I do, but as I have already mentioned previously, I am not an expert. I'm just an okay artist who enjoys playing with this stuff. And if you guys are interested in watching, I have, and I know based on looking at this art, you may be surprised to learn, I actually have a 2-year degree in computer animation and graphics from the Art Institute of Houston. I just haven't kept it up. You know what I mean? Most of my real life stuff has kind of taken over for many moons, and I have been out of practice with this stuff. My drawing has been backburnered while I was doing real life, working security sales as a Republic Harley Davidson. I sold Harley Davidsons for a couple of years at a Republic Harley Davidson off of 59, and then I went to work for a company that is contracted to do installs for satellite television, and I worked their inventory and stuff of that nature, and I've done retail sales and all kinds of other things that just I needed to do to get the bills paid. So that's kind of where I've been lately. Kind of a brown, almost death color will go in the mouth. Objective of what I'm doing here really is I started this drawing, we've been playing this game. My storyteller's name is Daniel, and he's been running this game for, let's see, every Saturday. This Saturday we didn't have the game because the shop was closed for Chupacabra Con here in Texas, and so other than this Saturday, this particular game has been going on for, I don't know, a month or so. It's been a while. Month of Sundays. Or in this case, a month of Saturdays. Nosferatu as a clan are a monstrous looking race, and they have certain abilities and stuff that allude toward that monstrosity. Like one of the powers they get is something called nightmare, which is I can go into the brain of my victim and say, I can make you have a waking dream of whatever your biggest terror or horror is. If you're afraid of spiders, you could be dreaming that you're laying in a bed filled with tarantulas and black widows and brown recluses, and that they're crawling all over your body, and any one of them could bite you at any second. And so you as a person would suddenly go kind of glassy-eyed as your vision filled with this, and you would go to a sense of fear or terror, depending on how many successes I get. I would not know what your fear was, but I would know that it was my manipulation that put you there. And I can use that power to affect things around me in order to make I should say affect people around me in order to make if I make you afraid of something, it could cause you to lose your focus on something else. Or I could use that as a distraction. I could have someone else come in that's going through fits of terrors, and I could have other people in the room suddenly, oh my God, Tom's in trouble, let's go help Tom, and they go to deal with him, and that pulls you away from an area that I need to sneak into or something of that nature. So, depending upon how I use my power, it can benefit or harm those around me. My manipulating of that ability gives me advantages or disadvantages depending upon the number of successes and whatnot that I roll. Oh, why is that not working? Oh, because I'm still on erase. Erase, erase, erase. You ever notice how even white teeth aren't really 100% white? I mean, sure, you've got dentists out there that can paint your teeth whiter or make them whiter, but naturally, teeth are not really 100% white. Oop. Obviously, I have a break in that circle somewhere. Let's see if that didn't seal it. Yep. Yep. Got it. Artists who use digital art tablets are probably aware of what the pressure sensitivity means when you're talking about one of these digital art tablets and these little pens that are available. These are all through the Huion tablet. And before anybody asks, no, I don't get any bonuses for that. My channel just started. I have maybe 2 followers, if that. But I do enjoy using them quite a bit. So if I go back to the teeth layer has its own layer, and so does the head layer. So with the head layer, I could change that color to something a little more soft pink if I wanted to. Now, vampires in general don't have the pink colored flesh that we do. They're typically more of actually probably a blue-gray type color. So I'm going to go there. Too dark. And what I will do from there is I will go back to that soft pink color. I will zoom in on this.
Copy blog post title.
I'm going to go to the eyes and nostril layer and use the pen tool to kind of make a
Schedule button underneath.
ignore my wife. She's talking to herself about her job. She has earbuds in, listening to her music. And as I said, this channel will have music eventually. What I'm doing is I am updating my iTunes software, and I'm going to try to get some royalty-free music in a playlist that I won't get muted out by Twitch if I'm playing it, because I don't want to upset any artists and stuff. And if you yourself are an artist or something, and excuse me, a musical artist, local band, or something of that nature, and you'll give me written permission to play your music on my channel, I will broadcast that written permission on my Twitch channel, and I will play your music in my playlist so that it will pop up. And that way you get some free advertising and I get some real music. I will warn you that I don't expect that this channel is going to become incredibly popular. I am more a niche type thing. There are much better artists out there that are doing similar things to what I'm doing and doing it well. I think my kitty's having a nightmare. Shh, it's okay. Yeah, it's all right.
What's the matter, baby girl?
It's my Lotus Kitty's over here being all talkative behind my screen. I think she had a bit of a nightmare.
What's up?
think she was sleeping, and she kind of had a bad dream because she started kind of grumbling a little bit, and then she started getting louder.
Sweet girl. You're a good girl. Okay.
I realize that this might look odd to people because of the blue lines and stuff, but the blue lines eventually, which is the blue pencil layer, will go away, and this will be the type of art that you'll be seeing once it gets going. Now, I haven't finished obviously with the highlights for the teeth or the rest of the head. I'm going to do the shadows and whatnot, but while the blue line is there, that's a guide based on my initial thumbnail sketch that I did to explain to me where I am drawing per se, you know what I mean? Like, I could take this, pull that image up and just go slightly darker, flip back over to the pen, or actually let's go to this and we'll zoom into the teeth real quick, switch back over to the pen, and I can kind of so wherever you're seeing these lines, I'm just going through with the darker color. In certain areas where the teeth are connecting. Now when you drop that blue pen layer, you're going to see the image of the teeth a little bit better from a distance. And this will actually, the bottom's going to be more of a highlight than. The top is going to be more highlighted than it's going to be. I don't want the shadows there. I want brightened area. Keep the shadows.
Phew, Miss Luna.
Not much difference. That looks like it pretty much picked the exact same color, doesn't it?
Come on, Luna. Was there something on those? You noticed it in my bag.
Why not? Is it patty?
I'll think she's fine. But she's nervous.
Let me see if I can tell. Go back over here to. Whoa.
Miss Notice. Come here.
I'll go to my dashboard. So I've had a total of 27 views. Currently there are 2 viewers that are out there. I can't really tell.
None of them show up on the chat, right? They don't chat. I believe one of those viewers is constantly you.
What?
Talking to him.
I don't think so because I don't open up the channel on my own. Everything I've got open is on the dashboard. So unless I open up a Twitch channel separately and then pull up the video, I won't. I don't think that I'm viewing it. But I mean, I could be wrong. You might be right. You know more about Twitch than I do. Morgan watches all the live view gamers doing the video games and stuff. I don't watch that as often. But
for some reason, every time I go into yours, I get this. It does not activate, it just buffers, so Twitch might be having issues.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. I can see myself fine. I'm showing up live, and so I've got the chat stream open in another window. If you guys need to say anything to me, I can see it.
Please, talk to him. He gets lonely easily.
I don't know that lonely is the appropriate word, but let's go back to the... Is it the other nostril there? It is. Alright. So that's where this is going to go. Okay. I was just making sure that the chat part was working. And it is. Back here. And I realize that it's, well, where I am in Texas, it's 6:30 in the evening on a Sunday. And Sundays are, at least when I was a kid, are a lot of times family days, and I have not set the schedule up for this. Oh wait, what's that? Damn. So the head layer is where the rest of that throat is. That's alright. Let's bring back up the blue pencil guidelines. Yes, I haven't gone down there yet, have I? Alright, so we're going to change back to the pinkish color that we were using to kind of... That's kind of the highlight for the edge of her flesh, and then I'll go with a darker blue for the shadows and stuff when I get there. But in the game of if a vampire wants to give the illusion, or what they call blush of life, they are able to spend a point of blood and make it look like their skin flushes with, reddish colors and whatnot. But as a Nosferatu, I don't know that that would really be all that beneficial, usually. Have to assume that the monstrous look of the Nosferatu is something that they have learned to live with over decades. Well, depending upon the age of the vampire, of course. If you're a young Nosferatu, you probably not as used to it. But so let me show you guys real quick. Those of you not familiar with the art tablet, the Huion design or whatnot, if I take, let's go with a red color real quick. If I take a red color and I just draw a straight line, alright, that's relatively, I won't call it a straight line, that's a relatively easy line to draw, and you can tell that it keeps the exact same pressure. But because there is pressure sensitivity, if I draw that line and change the pin pressure as I'm going, you can see where it gets heavier and then lighter. I can also, because right now the pressure was changed to 5, if I go to light right now, heavier, 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 light, 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 light. And you can see that that changes up the density of the line and the ability of the artist, or the artist has more control over what they are, drawing. Now I can use that to my advantage when I'm drawing things like these facial highlights and whatnot. And when that blue pencil goes away at the end, and I'm just having the image of the character there, it'll look, or it should look better. We will see what happens as we go along.
Come sit my lap, baby. Sweet girl.
The shoulders will have more of a highlighted area, and with more pin pressure I can fill in more area quicker. And as it fades, of course, because this is on an entirely separate layer from the main one, I can do additional work with the eraser to kind of clean up the edges some and give it a little more of a...
Okay, so this week is set.
There we go.
No, it's like way more. Let's see.
Of course, that was on the eye nostril lane. So I kind of screwed that up too. But there's a way to fix that as well if I want to. I can just Control X, and then if I go down to the cloak layer, cloak 2 actually, because cloak 2 is where the highlights and stuff are. I can do a Control V and it'll create its own layer right above it. And then I can link that one to it, highlight that one, and then go here and tell it to merge linked layers. And the cloak 2 will now have the dark and the light highlight areas. And now that I'm back on the cloak, for whatever reason I seem to keep gravitating that direction. I guess that's what my subconscious wants to work on, so I'll go back to it. The thing about these tatters in this part of the cloak is these are mostly guides that I can use to kind of play with the look. It doesn't have to be identical. And like down here, I should probably go with the darker color, so let me borrow that. Realizing that the layers of the cloak are going to be like, I would say that really this whole part here, the creases and the folds are going to be more dark than they are highlighted. The outside area might have a highlight in it. My wife's virtual assistant position is what she's doing. She's online. She works for companies that hire her contractually to do assistant work, such as, you know, keep up a variety of different social networks and maybe post some ads and things in certain areas, help out with some marketing, keep some organizational skills things done for them, background stuff, while they handle the business side of things. she does all the background work for them that keeps the you know, the customers coming in and things of that nature. It makes what she's back there typing away on, I have no clue, but she does Pinterest posts and whatnot, and with her typing skill, she can, like, the most recent test that she took, she's roughly 116 words per minute without error. I'm lucky to get 40 words per minute, and then there's lots of errors. But the gist of it is, the reason why you're hearing that massive amount of typing back there is because she is furiously working away for one of her clients. She has a couple of what she calls anchor clients. Those are the ones that make it to where her side job is feasible, that she could actually continue doing this, because it does have profitability to it. But she needs a couple of more anchor clients before it's going to become feasible to just do that. Alright, let me go back up to the head layer. And we will fill in this gnarly hand of hers with the same flesh color as the head. And the only part of this line that matters is the exterior line right now. Some folks would say, well, there, you got it. Go ahead and close in from the thumb to the staff, and you can fill the rest in. But the problem is the staff's not on this layer. So really, now I can do that. Close out that little knuckle and that little white bit right there. Now, I don't want to highlight in pink. I want to shadow. So I'm going to pick this color up and go darker. And then in shadows are going to be between the fingers. base here, and because these knuckles are facing away from the moon side, I will darken them in. They describe the Nosferatu claws as gnarled fingers and staff is leaving a bit of a shadow here along the thumb, inside of the thumb, and in here on the inside of the palm of her hand. And I'm doing some creasing in the skin. And zoomed in real close like this, that staff doesn't look very good. I'm hoping that when I finish this image, and what that black line, that bordered line right there represents, is 8.5 by 11-inch paper. And when I crop it, I will bring the image down about 1/4 of an inch on all sides, and then I can hopefully print it in color. I might do one with the lines and one without, just to see which one looks good, but I'm not 100% sure, how I'm gonna do that right now. So I am going to reset this to black and then pull that black up slightly. And I'm going to start working on this tree in the background just because I need something different to work on for a while. Because of the way I am building this tree, it's going to be more of a silhouetted, gnarled image behind the, or I should say in front of the moon, but behind her. So like you can see if I'm down here and I color towards her, it just vanishes behind the cloak. That's because the cloak's on a different layer. It makes things very easy when you're doing these little twigs and stuff out here won't actually show up on the final 8.5 by 11, but it's good practice, and it gives the tree more character, if you ask me. I wanted to get detailed on this tree, I could put kind of a moonlight colored highlight to the sides of the branches that face the moon. But because it's actually a background part of the image, I'm not going to do that. It's just going to be silhouetted.
What's up, buddy?
Sweet boy. Deck up boy. Sweet boy.
Hey, you about to scoop boxes?
Okay.
You don't have to. I'm just asking.
I can.
It is almost 7, so
One of the reasons why we shower. And I feels better. Oh, there's a kitty in the window.
Sweet
this
boy.
tree had a lot of character to it when I got the original drawing off of online, and I will be the first to admit this is a
Deck up boy.
tracing image that I saw from a spooky tree and moon look that I liked.
Was that you, Mr. Kasai?
Morgan, don't just put that straight in the washer. Dump it out first. Into the trash.
In the garage.
Whatever.
So now, if I did this right,
If you would be so kind as to.
which I'm not
If you would
saying
be so
I
kind
did,
as to
but
put away your clothes when you go upstairs so I can hang the rags tomorrow.
Oh. Okay.
I'm gonna steal this from
Nope.
Miss Flurry.
Okay, well, they've been sitting in there for the last 2 days. You need to rewash
do
them.
a
Or did you
control.
just put them in?
I just put it in. I'm gonna be sitting with it. I would put that in.
She's like,
process, so I'm gonna have to go through and just kind of fill in as I go.
Okay. This one goes.
I can turn off cloak. Nope, that's all filled in. Our little baby Kaylee makes the cutest noises as you annoy her by picking her up and petting her, and so we have a tendency to overdo that.
No, I do.
We all do.
She's a good girl. She says I'm a little cutie pie. I like it when you just scratch me like this.
And of course, she doesn't help her matters after she, rubs up on my leg, which means I want to pick her up again.
She's like, man, things keep happening to me.
Because you don't leave me, that's why.
Meow.
If you just ran away at the sight of me, I wouldn't be able to pick you up. And you would never have to worry. Now, at the dog, she's
I
feeling
don't know if
and jealous.
that little pop-up there was something I need to worry about or not, but I'm not gonna right now. I've got other things on my mind.
You're such a good boy.
Let's zoom in here. There it is. That's where the line quit.
Good kitty,
I had a guide that I was using to organize certain things, and that's why you see this little outcropping here. That is so perfect. Photoshop has these guides that you can use. And by perfect, what I mean is the lines are straighter than my lines. They're not, they don't take artistic license on the branch. They are so currently my vampire game that I was talking about is filled. We actually have total, I think there are 8 or 9 players at the table, plus of course the GM. But with the new Vampire 5th edition coming out, the store is doing a little push. They're offering pre-orders out through the store itself. So if you're a member such as myself, you can get your membership discount when you go into the store and do your pre-order, and then still get and the other thing, of course, that they're going to do is they're going to start allowing others to run games up. I mean, you can already run games up there if you wanted to, but when the new book comes out and goes live, and when things get kind of rolling on more of a regular basis, they're going to offer, for GMs or storytellers is what they call them in that game, to come in and run their own games. And I actually have an idea for a realm that I was planning on doing. It's going to be a modern day vampire setup in most of the southern states. And not because I'm stuck in southern states so much as because it's just what I'm familiar with. I know the area better. I've worked all over in this particular area, and so plus since the game's going to be played here, my assumption is that the other players will be more familiar with this area as well. So it has nothing to do with, quote, Southern pride, end quote. It's everything to do with just convenience for the storytelling options of, familiarity. You can really tell where that guideline was, can't you? Makes your pin lines snap to the guide, so that's why you get these sharp corners right in the middle of your otherwise artistic lines that I drew. So like if I'm following this line down, I'm sure you get the point. If any of you know of somebody else who has a small business and is looking for online assistant help, virtual assistant help, send them to clevercat.com. That's my wife's site/business. Yep, there's another one you can tell where the guideline took over. Let's see. Oh, look up there. Dumbass me. There. I'll seal that off and see if I can do... That's better. See how it filled all that in? And I can just take the eraser and go back in. Make a few holes in it. Which really what these are is just like the branches crisscrossing over one another. It gives it more of an organic feel. I like the way the original tree looked in the painting I saw. I would give credit to the artist if I knew who he was, but to be honest with you, I just pulled the picture off of Facebook. Not Facebook, I'm sorry, Pinterest. So the only thing that I'm taking from that artist's work, and there was a lot more in the original picture, is I took the tree and the shape and size of the moon in the background. Everything else, the ravens, the picture of Jacqueline, the image that I got off of a Gothic looking building that could have been around back in the 1800s or the 19th century. I just did an image search and I used it as my base image for the cemetery that she lives in. 'Cause as I said, her family owns the cemetery, and there's a there are tombs and catacombs that interconnect below the cemetery to the sewers beneath the city of London, and that way the Nosferatu, the more monstrous looking vampires of the kindred, are able to move around London without scaring the people that are out for the evening in the streets above. At least not all of them. they do have a the Botticelli bloodline, which is where Jacqueline comes from, has an ability to mimic sounds, and one of the things that they say in one of the online things that I read is that they will mimic the sound of an injured dog or kitten or child deep down inside of a sewer pipe or something, and then as people hear this and become brave and try to go down to see if they can help the child or the animal, then the vampire will feed upon those people. And in the lore that they use in this game, the act of feeding upon humans actually puts the human into a state of euphoria temporarily, and much like a mosquito bite, you don't really feel the teeth going in. You will become weakened from the loss of blood if I take too much of your blood, but if I only feed a little bit on you, then I can use the vampire saliva. I can lick my finger and rub it on the holes, either on your neck or your shoulder, or wherever I chose to bite you, and it will seal the wound. And then as I release you, you will have no memory of the feeding. That way I don't have to kill everyone that I feed with. Now, obviously, depending upon how hungry the vampire is that captures you, or how much blood they need, they can put you in a hospital or just flat out drain you dry and kill you. And a vampire bite in the game does not convert you to vampirism. The only way to become a vampire is through a process that is known as what was the term? Diablerizing. No, diablerizing is the killing of a vampire. If I'm trying to create a new vampire, I am embracing. That's the term I'm looking for. I embrace the human. And what an embrace is I drain your blood, I kill you, I drain your blood, and then I fill some of your blood back in with my blood. And so I've fed you vampire blood, and in so doing, you become a member of my clan, my vampire clan, and you will be granted some of the powers of my bloodline. Now, the base powers of a vampire, the immortality and the desire to feed on blood, all vampires have that. But certain clan disciplines are only available to, like we talked about, Jacqueline Mudgett has the ability of Nightmare, and that is specific to the Nosferatu clan. And there are multiple clans, and depending upon which version of vampire you're playing, whether it's Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, Vampire Requiem, Vampire the Dark Ages, and there is now Vampire 5th Edition. As you go through all the different clans of each one, they each have their own storylines and their own abilities that they could get. So depending on who you were embraced by would show which powers you got. The gangrel in the older versions are the ones that can transform into bats or wolves or mist. And they have the ability to speak with animals and have animals bend to their will. And they have something called protean, which is that's what they're able to convert into the other animals, and it also allows them to merge with earth, or grave dirt specifically is the easiest for them to merge with, but they can merge with any type of dirt they wish. And then once they've done that, they can take time to heal up, or it protects them from daylight. So if I'm away from my haven or my chosen place where I would sleep during the day, and I need to find a place to sleep, I can just find myself a patch of dirt in a junkyard or something where there's nobody around, merge into the earth, sleep for the day, and then when I wake up at night, I can hunt and replenish the lost blood or whatever I need. There's a online podcast, Twitch channel, and YouTube channel for a group out of California known as Happy Jacks RPG broadcast. And they played for some time Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition. They just recently, within the past couple of months, finished a storyline, and one of the members of their group, who notoriously has the worst luck with dice, is known as Stork. They make a joke at the conventions and stuff if you roll many critical fails in a row, or you're just having crappy rolls in general and bad things happen to your character. They call it, "Oh, you storked it." His name has kind of become a verb. So, poor guy. But anyway, he played a very cool gangrel character by the name of not Arthur. What was his name? Alfred. Arthur. I'm forgetting his name right now. But one of the things he used to do in order to hide, I can't remember his name, but anyway, what he used to do in order to hide is he would go offshore. He'd go out to the beach and walk out into the water, and when he got, a good 10, 20 feet away from the shore itself, then he would use his protean to merge with the earth below the water. So they say when you use protean to earth meld, that it's very difficult to find a gangrel that is earth melded unless you know exactly where they went in. Other gangrels could, of course, track the scent of the gangrel and find the location where he buried himself, and then once they knew that, they could dig him up and kill him if they wanted to. They could have their ghouls, their daytime help, dig him out of the earth and kill him. And so what they were able to do, what he was able to do, and I want to say his name was, I keep leaning back to Alfred. I know he was a 1970s porn star. backstory was a porn star? As I recall, there was an episode where they discussed how he got turned and what happened, but I don't remember that story specifically. Mostly what I remember is the fact that he was able to use that protean ability to hide offshore. But anyway, I stole that idea outright. I flat out said, you know what, that's too cool. So I'm playing a gang role myself in a Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition game with some friends online. We use Google Hangouts, and it plays every other Sunday. As a matter of fact, we just played a minute ago. And I am playing a rather older, not like ancient, but older vampire who was Italian descent, and his name is Enzo. And Enzo is a bounty hunter gang role, and we are playing. The storyteller is in Slovenia, and one of the things that I did with Enzo when he first came to Slovenia, and my bounty hunter travels a lot, so I kind of set him up with some gear. And the gear that I gave him, one of the things that he has is he has a shipping container home. I don't know if you guys are at all familiar with tiny houses or off-grid housing type stuff. But in his storyline, I gave Enzo this shipping container home, and because it's in modern day, I gave him some movable solar panels that recharge during the day while he's sleeping. They recharge his battery bank inside the shipping container, and then at nighttime I can watch TV, fire up my computer, do whatever I want to do. And I have I work currently, as I mentioned earlier, I work in the what do you call it? It's satellite television. And they have something called a non-penetrating roof mount, which is typically reserved for commercial jobs, right? So like if you have let's say you've got a doctor's office and the doctor wants to have direct TV, but he's leasing his office. So he can't permanently mount his dish to the building because the lease, won't allow that. The landlords would be upset if you drilled into the wall and mounted a dish and then left, right, when your lease is up. So non-penetrating roof mounts are used in those cases where they've got that type of thing. And what they do is there's this big square sled. Think of something about like this, right? And this is small, but you get the idea, where it's kind of a rectangular sled, and the base of it has beams that go through them like this, and then the mast that holds the dish up connects to that sled, along with these braces that keep it solid, and then you put that on a flat surface roof, and you angle the dish towards the satellite up in the sky. And DirecTV and Dish Network and whatever other satellite companies that are out there, they have geosynchronous orbit satellites that are set in a specific area in the sky, and if you have the elevation and azimuth angle of a compass, you can get the general direction for your dish set on that thing, and then you can use you can tune it in to get the highest amount of signal as possible. If you have like an aim meter, or there's something that we used to use when I was in the field as an installer, was called a bird dog. That's pretty much out now. Nobody uses bird dogs anymore. It's aim meter is mostly what they're using now. You can also bring up on your television screen your settings and go under setup, and then from setup you can go to signal strength, and it'll show you how much signal strength you're getting. Like you'll have a bar about like yay long, and if this much of it's filled up, you've got all the rest of this that you're trying to get. So if I've got, say, my wife inside with FaceTime, and she's phone on the television screen with that going, and then I'm outside on the roof with my wrenches, and I've hooked to the azimuth, or the elevation and the azimuth bolts that are on the underside, I can ask her, okay, tell me if it's going up or down. Or I can be looking at my FaceTime screen and see on my screen, okay, as I go this way, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up, starting to go down. Okay, so go back a little bit. All right, that's the top strength I'm getting that direction. Go to this other one. It's going up, it's going up, it's going up. All right, starting to go down. All right, go back the other way just a little bit. All right, that's the top I'm getting that way. Now that I've got those two zoned in, go back to the other one. Check it again. And you can zone that thing in as long as you've got it on a level thing. You take a level and make sure that the platform is level, and that the mast is level at 90 degrees from the platform. You can get really strong signal. The higher the signal strength, the higher quality the image you will get on your television. The less pixelation, the less chance that cloud cover is going to make you get the, I'm sure that you guys, anybody who has satellite, you've seen the 707 searching for signal or whatever, that you'll have less chance of that, all kinds of stuff like that. So there's also, if you are a gamer such as my son or me to a lesser extent, I don't do it, what do you call it, I'm not a competitive gamer, but there's a certain amount of lag that comes off of a lower internet speed, and so dish internet would be a bad thing if you were trying to be a gamer, or for instance stream live videos of yourself drawing and playing music, and at the same time my wife is working on her job and my son is back there watching Netflix in the living room or doing whatever it is he wants to do. That much stuff going on at once, you would get lag and delays in your video and whatnot. So if you're, like I was saying about the gamer, if you're a competitive gamer, just the tiniest amount of lag can give your opponent the benefit, because if the higher speed internet will be the one that wins that fight, because he's going to draw an attack that much faster than you. So in those types of situations, you would not want satellite internet. You would want cable internet or fiber optic internet or something of that nature. But satellite internet has an additional lag to it, because your computer is sending a signal up to the through the lines up to the LNB. The LNB beams that thing out into the satellite, and then the satellite beams it back down to wherever your service is, and then the service connects it to the internet, and then when it gets the answer back, it beams it back up to the satellite, and then back down to the LNB, and then back through the cables to whatever it is that you're doing. So you're going to have, like, I don't know, little bit of lag there. So that's for something that I'm doing, that would not work. But for what my character Enzo was doing, which he's just researching online and checking out, searching for information about the people that he's hunting because he's a bounty hunter, or checking their social networks and seeing where they are, whatever. He doesn't care about a little bit of lag time. That's not going to affect his job. He's not streaming anything live. He's not worried about playing video games. He doesn't do this kind of stuff. So for him, being off-grid and being mobile is more important than having that high-speed internet. Like I am, what my wife and I do, we're more about having that speed than we are about and as Valerie would say, I'm a bit of an extrovert. I have a tendency to get online and tell my life story and blab on for hours on end about absolutely nothing, even when there's only 2 people listening. A little outside the line there, but that's alright. Again, the tree should look organic, not now when I get this tree the way I want it, I will use a violet and probably some other flavor of dark color, maybe a midnight blue, something of that nature, with a gradient to create a backdrop or a sky. And then what that will, I'll be able to add some stars into there the same way I'm doing what you're seeing here with these gapes in between the tree limbs and the branches here. That's what this erasing is here. I am what an artist would call negative space. Excuse me. Negative space drawing is actually not drawing with an eraser. What negative space drawing is if I have an object that I'm trying to give the impression that object is there, I draw the background around the object and just leave a void where the object is. That void is negative space. What I am doing here is creating negative space by drawing in with an eraser. I'm not 100% doing it right. I'm doing it my way.
My way.
Alright, let me shut off Jester. Where is my Jester layer? Is he here? Test.
Sounds like she wants to go outside again.
There it is. Alright, so with Jester shut off, I'll be able to erase behind him on that layer. And then I can turn these all back on. Alright. Get rid of those background ravens there. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to do those, so I brought them in and drew them in with blue ink, but they're on a separate layer so that I can just delete them if I don't like them. So like I said, Jacqueline has multiple ravens that answer her beck and call with her animalism, so she's able to use them as her spies around 19th century London to bring her information. And I can speak to them and they can speak to me, but nobody that doesn't have animalism will understand what they say, which is another layer of security for my spy network. Vampire in general is it's a horror based game, but it's very politically based as well. And what I mean by that is we as characters are expected to kind of collect and trade information to it's very Game of Thrones-esque if you guys have HBO or if you've read the George R.R. Martin novels for Game of Thrones. This type of a game is not as much about finding and killing monsters as it is you are a monster and you are trying to maintain a certain level of political power and intrigue. This is not how that drawing originally looked, but I like the look, so I'm gonna change it. You don't like it, I don't care. These areas out here. I will fill in as I go. This adds character to the tree and another dimension to the background of the image that gives it kind of a spooky look. As I said that it was kind of a Game of Thrones type of political intrigue and spies and gathering of information and making moves in the dark, trying to give power to the people you want to be in power and reduce power of those that are being assholes about it. But at the same time, the other thing that a lot of people don't remember about this game is this is very horror based. We are playing the part of vampires. Vampires are monsters at their core. They are not we're not talking about Edward Sparklehands and there are a lot of paranormal romances out there that turn vampires into more love interests and less monsters and horror that will eat your face because they're hungry. Hell with you. This game is intended. The reason why it's called a world of darkness is because it's intended to be a dark look at life as a vampire, and we are playing that. You're playing the part of a monster that needs to eat people to survive and to be immortal, and they need to if depending upon the game that you're in, there's different levels of the political world. Like if you're in the Camarilla, which is the main realm of the masquerade, that is the strongest and most well known of them all. There are laws about maintaining the masquerade, and you're not allowed to embrace another person without permission from the prince or the power therein. So you can't make new vampires within a region without permission from the higher ups, which makes sense because if you're trying to maintain the masquerade, the idea behind the masquerade is vampires don't want humans knowing that they actually exist. You know, we as people are supposed to believe, no, it's just a game, it's just a movie, it's just a book. It's not really there. So that's what they call the masquerade. But within our games, it's funny that both my storytellers right now are running a similar setup where instead of using the Camarilla or the kindred have, you know, the Camarilla is the overall political empire, and it's set up on a princedom. And what that means is that their people declare praxis over a region, and then they set up their household of people beneath them. So a prince would have, say, a sheriff and what they call the master of Elysium, and Elysium is the neutral ground where vampires and creatures of the night can meet and do their business without they're not allowed to fight one another. Then they have there are other parts of that, like what do you call them? I'm having trouble with the titles of the different layers. Other than the sheriff and the master of Elysium, there's also a hound, which kind of works beneath the sheriff to help track down criminals. The prince can also take control of the hound and send them to track down a particularly vile monster that has endangered the masquerade. Oh, there's also a position called the seneschal, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. That's the person that keeps the records of who's in which kingdom, and there are things called boons, which if a vampire, since they don't really use money except when they're dealing with humans. So if a vampire makes a deal with another vampire, they trade favors or boons, and those boons can be, they're very serious about it. If I offer a minor boon to another vampire saying, well, if you'll give me this information, I will offer you a minor boon. It's like a marker, and that other vampire is allowed to call that boon in. And the seneschal will have a book that says who has boons and owes what to who, minor or major or whatever. Then the vampire can call the vampire who holds the marker or the boon can call that in at any given time, and the seneschal or the sheriff would be the ones that would enforce that. So no, you offered the boon, they gave you this at this time, they held up their end of the bargain, you have to, pay your boon. And then if you don't, there can be a variety of punishments for that, up to and including what's known as the true death. The reason why they call it the true death is because as a vampire we're already what's known as undead, which means we don't actually have to breathe or eat or whatever.
What's the matter with you? Is there something scaring you?
Possibly, but it's really very neat.
Something freaking you out, puppy?
Apparently I didn't do this correctly where I have
You're a good dog.
lines to follow, so I'm going to finish out this section out here, and then I'm going to connect them back in here using impromptu lines and connections.
I'm gonna go lay down, baby. It's okay.
Maybe she's going to go upstairs. It is late.
And if you're
It's not that late. It's not even 8 o'clock yet.
curious as to why I'm going to connect these,
Why don't you put her coat on her? Just see if that makes her feel better.
part of the reason why is because
Well, if she feels nervous about something,
these ravens here, this raven specifically, is kind of a spectral raven. So when I'm finished with him, I'm going to make his layer somewhat transparent. Which means that all of these branches and twigs in the background have to match up. Because I didn't blue line those in when I did this. I should have done the tree blue lines and the raven blue lines and Jacqueline's blue lines all on their own individual layers, and then I could have interconnected them or interwoven them as I saw fit,
no, I don't remember.
but I didn't, so
Look in the usual places. Under your coat right there on the rail.
Okay.
Look upstairs on the behind the trucks to see if it fell down.
so here's where that thicker line comes into play that I was telling you about. By using that little extra pressure, I maintain the illusion of this kind of a barked limb tree.
Hello, my sweet kitty. You're a good girl.
I told the Twitch stream not to allow my chat to fade over a period of time to keep it, but apparently that setting didn't get saved properly or something, because the one chat that I put in there that I could use to kind of monitor that is gone. So if you guys have been asking me questions and chatting with me and I haven't been responding, my apologies. Alright, let me zoom out here and we'll take a better look at this.
Water at my feet.
What the heck is all that?
Water?
Ah, black overlay. You know what I'm gonna do? because I don't like that. Those ravens up there in the back, I may keep those up there and I may delete them. I haven't decided yet. This highlighted layer doesn't seem to be anything right now. There's my staff. I don't see the glowy highlights. There's the test layer for gesture, shadow layer for gesture, base. Let's see, glow base layer. Oh, that's going to be his feet. I see that. Eyes and nostrils on her. The head and hands show up. Cloak, that's just the cloak too, so that's going to be mostly the highlights and the, what do you call them, the highlights and shadows. And then I bring up the main cloak layer 4. So all these are just images that images that I brought in for I brought those images in for references and stuff. So I think she's coming along okay. I do have some work to do on that face eventually. I'm not happy with those pink highlights in there. I think that needs to be a different hue. What I might do is if the head, yeah, see those are on the nostril, eye and nostril layer, not on the head layer. So what I might try to do is copy those pink layers, the pink on that one layer, and then do a Control X and then a Control V and then merge that layer with the face layer, and then I can use kind of a smudge tool to blend it a little better to give it more of a stretched skin look. I don't know that it's going to work. I may end up just deleting the whole thing out and starting from scratch. Who knows? Just depends. The overall look of the character right now. Go to image, go to image size. Resolution is at 300 pixels per inch. Yeah. Do you see back here in the distance, I've got that kind of a Gothic style building there. I'm going to fill that in with a base color underneath the blue pencil line, and then I'm going to go in with shadows and create the backdrops within there. It's going to be basically a 3-tone building using the same thing I did with the cloak. I'll have a highlight layer, a shadow layer, and just a base color layer. And it's going to be, excuse me, it's supposed to represent in her cemetery, her graveyard. That's going to be the like the funeral parlor where they hold their the funeral director will come in and do viewings for bodies and things for the general population, and then they'll take the bodies out and bury them in the tombs and the graves outside. And then out here in this area, I'm going to probably do a bunch of gravestones and maybe some statues and things, because she has what's known as a statuary. One of her touchstones, which is a vampire, has certain touchstones that help her maintain certain levels of humanity. One of her touchstones is her statuary, and she's kind of a unnamed artist that does a lot of the Gothic angels and things of that nature out there in the background. But we're coming up on 8 o'clock, so I've been streaming for a little bit of time here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and shut things down. So thank you guys for watching, and I haven't set a schedule yet, but I will eventually, and I'll post it, and then you guys will be notified as soon as possible as to when I'm going to do this on a regular basis. Right now it's just kind of falling on Sundays, and we'll see what happens going forward. If you guys have any comments or anything, you can post them on the video down below. Again, appreciate it. You guys have a good one.